This video contains quotes from the ITIL Lifecycle Suite.
Hello, and a very warm welcome from me. My name is Hitesh Patel, and thank you for joining me today on this session for preparing you to undertake the ITIL Foundation course. During this session, we're going to look at some of the key principles and concepts to prepare you for taking the 3-day ITIL Foundation course. Let me take this opportunity to introduce myself further. I've been with LearningTree since 2006, and during this time I've been involved in training service management globally. I've also been taking part in developing the ITIL curriculum within LearningTree. I also actively consult in the subject matter of ITIL and service management outside of LearningTree, and I've been recently involved in moderating the ITIL forum. In terms of the session objectives, for this session, we're going to be going through a brief overview of ITIL and its benefits, so why adopt ITIL within your organisation. We'll also be looking at services and this whole aspect of service delivery and value delivery in terms of the way we offer services to our customers. And associated with services, we'll be touching on some of the key stakeholders that you need to be aware of in order to prepare yourselves to take this ITIL Foundation course. Away from the key concepts and terms that we need to be aware of, we'll then be spending some time on this session talking about this concept of the service life cycle. We'll spend some time talking about the stages, as well as looking at some of the key processes that you need to be aware of to undertake the ITIL Foundation course. This, we hope, will provide you with a good basic background on ITIL, which should make your learning much more effective when you take the ITIL Foundation course at LearningTree. Just very briefly, just to make you aware of some typographic conventions, just a quick note that if you see any text in a direct quote from one of the ITIL publications, it will be in italic. Starting with the first key objective, let's talk about ITIL. ITIL stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library. The best way to view this is a library of best practice. In essence, it's a list of best practice ingredients, and how you choose to use those ingredients is totally dependent on you and your organisation. ITIL was created in the late 80s by the UK government, and there have been a number of revisions since. One of the key revisions was in 2011. However, what's still the same and remains the same moving forward is ITIL still provides a deep insight into real-world best practice in IT service management. The emphasis around the ITIL framework is around this key concept of a service lifecycle. This is taking the business needs and translating them into value-delivered products. And these products will be offered through services that will facilitate outcomes and hopefully achieve what the customer is looking to achieve to facilitate their outcomes and the business processes that they're utilising. The emphasis on ITIL is on business needs, doing things for the customer, appreciating what they're trying to achieve, with a focus at all times on value delivery. And by talking about value delivery, we talk about two key components in particular, which are referred to as utility and warranty. Now, you may have heard of the term warranty before, when buying or receiving some form of a warranty on a device or gadget that you may have recently purchased, and it's pretty much the same principle. It's all about providing the customer with the IT assurance in relation to the service that's being delivered. So when you start looking at utility and warranty, think about purchasing a service. When we purchase a service, whether it's an IT service or not, we are looking for a service that can facilitate our outcome. The service is a wrapper around the product or the application, and when we refer to the wrapper, we begin to explore the major areas around capacity, availability, continuity and security of our services. Customers want to have services that are available, services that are secure, services that can compensate for all of their users, and of course services that give access to services to their customers and their users and offer the resilience that is required. That's what we mean by assurance and assuring the customer for value delivery. So why adopt ITIL? Many organisations right now are asking the questions, why adopt the ITIL framework? What's in it for me? Well, one of the key reasons is to ensure the IT service provision is aligned to business requirements, to provide the needed value delivery to match customer and user expectations. We must first acknowledge, though, that this framework, how it's been developed, and it's been developed by a range of service management professionals from around the world that have contributed their time, their effort, their experiences and valuable knowledge and know-how to actually foster the growth and maturity of the ITIL framework that you see today. Earlier, I mentioned about the importance of providing services with the required performance and assurance elements, and this will in its very nature improve customer satisfaction, delivering services that will meet customer expectations and facilitate their own business outcomes. In terms of cost savings, well, ITIL is definitely a big advocate of actually trying to save money, definitely, but in the right way. And what I mean by in the right way, we're referring to actually optimization of the utilization and the management of our resources, not referring to reducing headcounts or removing resources or capabilities. ITIL has a big focus around continual service improvement and looking to better the way we deliver our services through people, processes and technology. I mentioned about the number of revisions that have been made to the ITIL framework, and some of the areas that have been addressed in more detail, definitely in recent history, include the areas of knowledge management, continual service improvement, and security. In terms of knowledge management, this ensures that we have processes in place to capture data, information, and knowledge, so that staff can use their own contextual awareness and common sense judgment to make those decisions that we feel would add value to the organisation. Continuous service improvement underpins the entire framework, and all staff have a responsibility to identify and demonstrate the need to improve. The goal at all times is to improve the effectiveness and efficiency in the way we deliver our IT services. Lastly, security. Security has always been a key consideration by many organisations, but with the recent revisions of the ITIL framework, there's definitely much more emphasis around building the security framework that underpin the delivery of our services. This definitely has strong links into ISO 27001, which is an international standard around security management. Referring to actually the delivery of our services, it's important to take a moment to now look at what we mean by services within the ITIL framework. Services are a way of delivering value by facilitating outcomes that customers want to achieve, but without the ownership of costs and risks. The key focus is making sure that we're very clear on the difference between a results-driven approach and a desired outcome-driven approach. As an example, customers don't want to go out and purchase a tablet device. That's not the service they're trying to utilize. They want something to allow them to send and receive email messages. So the desired outcome is not the product, but what they're trying to achieve through the functionality of the product provided by an IT service. A service provider will always be looking to utilize their service assets and deliver those desired outcomes. Now, in terms of delivery, the delivery will be underpinned by two major factors: resources and capabilities. Resources will be direct inputs for production and include financial capital, infrastructure, applications, and information. Capabilities, on the other hand, will include processes, knowledge, skills, and experiences. People will fall under both brackets. It is definitely worth noting that even if you have a large budget, the best infrastructure, an endless supply of IT staff at your disposal, it will be irrelevant unless you have the right people with the right experience and the right skills with the right knowledge. We should be looking at driving the direct inputs and integrating, where relevant, the capabilities to ensure that we're delivering value-added services. The ITIL roadmap that you may be looking to create will definitely depend heavily on these service assets that we've just discussed in terms of resources and capabilities. Service management is a set of specialized capabilities for providing value for customers in the form of services. During the foundation course, you'll often hear something referred to as the 4 Ps that underpin the delivery and support of services. What are these 4 Ps? Well, the 4 Ps refer to people, processes, products in terms of technology, and partners in terms of suppliers. These are some of the key stakeholders within the ITIL framework. ITIL suggests that the service provider may deliver services to one or more internal or external customers. For the majority of the clients that I work with, it's the case that actually they provide internal and external services, and therefore most organisations within IT are actually providing a balance between the two. Walking through some of the key stakeholders within the ITIL framework, the customer is also a very vital part of the value chain, and it's important to distinguish the difference between a customer and a user. In ITIL we talk about the customer as someone who would represent a wider user community, a user being someone who would use the service on a day-to-day basis. A customer is more of a representative. Can a customer be a user? Well, of course, but they don't have to be. The focus of the customer is to represent the service, the user community, and more importantly to ensure that the defined service levels have been agreed for the services that are being offered to the user base. As you can see, customers are going to be absolutely vital and very important, and their expectations must be managed. Not just from selecting the service required, but more importantly from actually defining and agreeing the targets to deliver those services that are wanting to be achieved. We're relying on these customers to work with these users, to represent their views, to manage their expectations, and then for the customer to work with IT in negotiating the right levels of the service. Then we have our good old friends, the suppliers, who may be supplying hardware and software related services. Hardware and software related services are definitely true for most suppliers, but they could also supply consultancy, training and coaching, as well as other services too. It's vital that we all start using a common language within IT, and this importance will be even further outlined when it comes to utilising the processes. One useful point to mention when referring to suppliers and delivery of services is that you'll come across on the foundation course a number of key principles in relation to agreements. These agreements will come in the form of SLAs in terms of service level agreements, OLAs which refer to operational level agreements, and underpinning contracts. The SLA will contain the agreed levels of service targets. An OLA, an operational level agreement, will be something referred to between IT and another internal supporting unit, just making sure that we've got everything in-house correctly set up and working before we start actually going out, meeting with customers and setting service level targets with those customers. Underpinning contracts will be negotiated with suppliers, and they will be providing services and ensuring that the service levels within the contracts will be aligned to the relevant OLAs and SLAs within the organisation. So suppliers are absolutely vital in the delivery of services, just as the internal service provider. Let's move our attention to now the key concepts on the ITIL Foundation course. We've now touched on some of the key stakeholders. We're now going to look at the key concepts. Firstly, a function. A function is a team or group of people that will use tools or resources to carry out a number of activities for a common objective. Within ITIL, we talk about a number of functions. Firstly, the service desk as being one of the key functions, providing a single point of IT contact across the organisation. We talk about our application and technical geniuses, technical management, having the technical geniuses and the know-how. Application management, referred to as actually doing the day-to-day application management within the organisation. And we also have a function that gets involved in the day-to-day operational aspects behind the scenes, and this function is referred to as IT operations management. When referring to functions, it's all about providing structure and stability. And within functions, we use something referred to as processes. So what is a process? Well, a process is a structured set of activities that achieve a specific objective. The key components of a process will be that every process will have a set of given inputs, a set of activities that translate those inputs into the delivered outputs that are expected. Now, we must ensure that in relation to when discussing this process architecture of inputs, activities, and of course outputs, we talk about the layer of governance being absolutely vital. And this is a layer that's provided on top of the processes to ensure and enforce control. So governance is being applied through policies, procedures, work instructions, and common protocols to ensure that we have credible inputs and the required outputs that are being delivered as agreed with the relevant stakeholders. Now, talking about governance, it's only fair that we also mention the enablers within the delivery of processes. In terms of the delivery, these enablers will come in the form of resources and capabilities that we mentioned earlier. Roles. Within ITIL, we talk about roles as being very vital. Now, in terms of roles will be a set of responsibilities that will be granted or authorized to a given individual. Now, roles will be defined to ensure that we have the correct control and management of the process activities. Examples of roles may be defined, including that for a process owner, a process manager, and even a process practitioner. The roles will comprise areas of responsibilities granted to a person or team. And referring to roles, we now come on to the principle of a RACI matrix, one of the key concepts that you'll encounter during the foundation course. Some of you may have come across this before, and within a RACI matrix, it's essential that all roles are clearly defined to enable for fast and effective decision making. Not only does it ensure fast and effective decision making, but in my experience working with clients, I've also seen it added as a kind of an additional benefit of helping to clarify who's doing what. Now think about an activity or a process within your organization. How good would it be to have a documented RACI matrix that clarifies who's accountable, who's responsible, who will be consulted and informed during this activity? Well, hopefully, a lot of that can be clarified by doing some form of a matrix that will outline the activities and responsibilities of your stakeholders for a given process or activity. The matrix does, however, come with a set of rules that we do need to be aware of for the foundation course. These rules are summarized here. We can only have one person accountable for a given process or activity. We can have one or many people responsible for a given activity, but we must have at least one. And in terms of consulted and informed, this is 0 or as required. So there isn't a definitive figure as to how many people you can consult or inform. The one cause for concern that I've seen in drafting a RACI matrix is that you can create a RACI matrix for a process that follows all the rules, but it may not be as effective or efficient as expected. For example, if you try to consult with every single stakeholder for a single activity, from a risk management point of view, it sounds great. We're eliminating a lot of risk because we're getting a lot of people involved. But from a productivity point of view, it's going to slow down the process, and something referred to as too many cooks in the kitchen, if you will. Here you will see the basic concept around the service lifecycle. You will see something referred to as requirements being triggered by the business, and this feeds all the way down into actual delivery of the required services. Let's break this service lifecycle framework down and correlate it to the next slides. The first stage of the service lifecycle is service strategy, and the focus of service strategy is the concept of value creation. From a strategic point of view, there is a focus around making sure we have the relevant policies, procedures, resources identified, and constraints documented to set the overall direction and vision of what we're trying to achieve within IT. The service strategy phase is responsible for making sure we have a service portfolio which contains our service pipeline, our catalogue, and our retired services. An important process also to mention on top of this is the business relationship management process, which has a strategic interest in with what customers are trying to achieve and ensuring the capturing of the high-level service requirements. The next phase, once we've identified what the overall vision and plan is moving forward and what the customer is looking to achieve, is service design. Service design is about ensuring that we have the right level of governing practices within IT, the right processes, architectures, to ensure that we can actually effectively realize the service strategy and deliver what the business is trying to achieve. Within service design, we're carrying out really a feasibility study. and really determining what is trying to be achieved and whether it's feasible. Can we deliver it within the time, cost, and maybe resource constraints? Service design is about designing the services that the customer wants. It's about creating and capturing a blueprint, that final roadmap. It's about asking all those difficult questions now as opposed to going live and facing difficulties later. You don't want to find yourself when things go live and you scratching your head thinking, gee, maybe I should have asked this in service design. What we're trying to get is all the questions out right now onto the table with all the answers, and we're trying to make this as pain-free as possible. But we have to be patient. We have to acknowledge that these questions have to be asked, and what we're trying to achieve is actually a benefit for the organization by ensuring that there's minimal disruption when services do effectively go live. And at the same time, we're trying to ensure that we protect the cost of the organization and mitigate any potential risks. In service design, we're not just looking at the architectures and standards or even just the solution designs. We're also looking at the overall deliverable, which is referred to as the service design package. Just imagine you've taken an idea of a concept. You're now validating whether this is actually worthwhile. And if you still feel worthwhile, then you may start to formulate a service design package, which in essence is a collection of requirements that are needed in order for a service to be built, tested, and deployed to hopefully fulfill those customer requirements that were initially outlined in service strategy. After service design, and once you have that blueprint, you have that roadmap, and you have that service design package, comes service transition. In terms of service transition, this is focused around new, modified, or required services that are needed to meet changes in expectations of the business. It's also about ensuring that we deliver requirements contained in that service design package that was an output of service design. Service operation is then the next stage. In terms of service operation is focused and very focused around value delivery. And it's a very unique stage of the life cycle because this is where the customer actually sees the value in utilizing a service. To be fair, the customer doesn't see the value in strategy, design, or transition. The customer actually sees the value in when they start using the service to facilitate some form of business outcome. And then they can see the value of what is trying to be achieved. Service operation is where we're making sure that we deliver and manage services at agreed levels to the business and users. You may remember earlier we talked about this agreement referred to as service level agreements. These agreed targets will be captured in these agreements, and service operation will be responsible for ensuring the adherence to these service level agreements. The final stage of the life cycle is a favourite of mine. It's continual service improvement. Continual service improvement occurs across the life cycle. Continual service improvement will appear in role descriptions, activities, and generally part of the service life cycle of delivering services. It has a strong focus on ensuring that we align and realign our IT services with changes in business needs. The key is all about realignment. We know customer requirements are going to change. Are we ready for that change? Do we have the processes that can implement improvements? And do we have the resources and capabilities that can continue the momentum moving forward? These are the processes that you need to be aware of during that foundation course and to prepare yourselves in actually undertaking that foundation course. On the course, you'll get sufficient time to go through each process, but remember, you'll only cover a 30,000-foot overview of these key processes. You will not be going through any process in great detail as compared with maybe an intermediate course. You will cover the processes over the 3 days on the foundation course, but here's just a brief overview of something that you may want to be aware of to help prepare you to undertake that foundation course. Let's begin with service strategy. Service strategy has 3 key processes: service portfolio management, financial management for IT services, and business relationship management. Service portfolio, as mentioned earlier, contains the pipeline, catalogue, and retired services, and is seen as a crucial strategic management tool when planning to invest in new or existing services. It ensures that the provider at all times has the right mix of services, balanced with the ability to meet key business outcomes. Financial management for IT services has a focus around having the right level of accounting, budgeting, and charging mechanisms. Financial management underpins the entire service lifecycle, as every process will have financial needs. The next process to discuss is business relationship management. Business relationship management ties with service level management, because business relationship management has a focus on the strategic aspects and service level management on the operational aspects. The service strategy stage ensures that we capture the high-level business requirements, and this is a major output to service design. Service design has a number of processes, and therefore the management of these processes and ensuring that these processes adhere to common policies is vital. This is where service design coordination fits into the framework. It provides that needed layer of governance over service design. Within service design, you're likely to have some form of a design coordinator. Now, this person could be a leader or a manager who can coordinate service design, and of course, this will depend on the complexity of the service that you may actually be requesting, whether it's a new service or a change or potentially the removal of a service. The next process is service catalog management. This is a process mentioned earlier in service strategy that falls under service portfolio, but actually resides in service design. The importance of the service catalog is demonstrated by the need to have customer-facing and supporting views of the services that we actually deliver. Customers and IT staff will have different requirements, and the service catalog will cater for both. Referring to the service catalog and the capturing of services, this nicely moves on to the next process, which is service level management, which involves defining the relevant service level agreements and operational level agreements, and managing customer expectations. Service level management will have a vested interest in the service catalogue, as this will list all the services that are live and therefore should have some form of an agreement attached to them. Supplier management was briefly mentioned earlier when discussing contracts. Supplier management will work closely with the service level management process to ensure that all contracts have service levels that underpin the relevant SLAs. The next four processes relate to assurance. These four processes are referred to as availability, capacity, information security, and IT service continuity management. You may recall early in the session we talked about the importance of these four processes, offering warranty and underpinning those key assurance factors. The first process to cover is availability management, making sure services are available. Capacity management, ensuring that we've actually facilitated the capacity needs in the delivery of our services, whether that be in terms of actually a capacity threshold, in terms of users to access a service. Information security, one of the key deliverables in information security is an information security policy, and enforcing this across the organisation to ensure common adherence. And lastly, IT service continuity management. How fast can IT get back to business in the event of a major disaster? How good are the resilience mechanisms, especially for those critical services? The next phase of the life cycle to look at is service transition. Service transition has a big focus in the way we create, modify and remove services across the organisation. The first process of service transition is transition planning and support, and this provides the overall planning for service transition and coordinates the resources that they require. When we refer to transition, we may start to think about change, and there are many different areas within change across the organisation. But it's important that before you attend the course, that you realise that this is all about IT change management. Therefore, we're not going to be talking about business change. That will be outside the scope of the ITIL Foundation course. Talking of change, change management is another process within service transition, which is about controlling the life cycle of all changes and ensuring that those beneficial changes are made but with minimum disruption to IT services. Change management is about protecting the interests of the business at all times and ensuring that risks and costs to the business are taken into account when assessing changes. Followed after change management is release and deployment management, which is about building, testing and deploying releases. It works heavily with change management because change management will provide the relevant authorization channels to move between these key stages of build, test and deployment. The transition processes will not be effective unless they have a good foundation in terms of the assets that are within the control of the IT service provider. Service asset and configuration management ensures that assets are identified, controlled, and more importantly, cared for throughout the life cycle. We need to be confident that we know our own environment before we go out and implement any change. The last process to look at within the service transition umbrella is knowledge management. You may recall that we discussed knowledge management as being one of the major ingredients now with the recent updates of ITIL. It ensures that we share perspectives, ideas, experience and information across the organization. Yes, it's about ensuring that the right people get the right information at the right time to make those informed decisions. But it's also about avoiding the rediscovery of knowledge and improving efficiency. Service operation. Service operation has a number of processes and functions. Let's discuss the processes first. Event management is focused on detection, management, and the action of the operational events that are of significance to IT. Away from event management is a favorite for many students, which is incident management. Everyone loves to talk about incident management, and I've heard many war stories from students about how good or how bad their process is within their organization. Incident management is about restoring service as quickly as possible and minimizing the impact on the customer, therefore ensuring that those agreed levels of availability and quality are maintained. One point to mention though, when discussing any of these processes within the foundation course, is that we're learning it the ITIL way. Therefore you have to put aside how you do it in your organization for the purpose of learning ITIL and earning those key certifications. Incident management deals with those areas of calls on the service desk where customers are finding difficulties, defining maybe accessing a service, difficulties in terms of maybe utilizing a service. We have another process that can assist customers, and this is request fulfillment. However, it's another interesting process because it covers the management of all life cycle of all service requests, so those that are not business impacting. Common requests include the creation of new starter accounts, an order of a new toner cartridge, or maybe access to a particular folder. Away from incident and request fulfillment, we now look at problem management. Problem management manages the life cycle of all problems from first identification through to investigation, documentation, and hopefully eventual removal. One key point that should be made is that a problem could be the underlying cause of one or more incidents. Yes, it can just be one incident. And lastly, in terms of service operation, access management, by its very nature, has a strong integration with security. I like the subject area of access management because it's about enforcing the information security policy that's delivered by the IT security management process in service design. Yet again, you can see how the service lifecycle has processes across the framework that interact with each other. Within the service operation stage, we also cover 4 functions, which are also listed on the slide. These 4 functions were briefly looked at earlier on in the session. However, just as a reminder, the service desk is a single point of contact that takes those calls on the first line basis. We then have second and third line support, which could entail technical and application management, technical management providing that infrastructure related support, and application management providing that application level support. And then we have IT operations management, which provide the back-end support, those day-to-day operations that need to be carried out in order to keep our services up and running. Finally, the last stage of the service lifecycle is continual service improvement. It has one process. Yes, that's correct, just one process that you need to review during the foundation course. The 7-step improvement process. This defines and manages the steps that are needed to identify, define, gather, process, analyze, present, and hopefully then implement those needed improvements. Everything we do in ITIL should have an ethos of continual service improvement. For the foundation certification, you are required to have a general recall of all these processes that we've just touched on. However, you may notice that some processes on these slides have been highlighted in red. These processes are considered to be key processes in the ITIL Foundation course, and therefore more in-depth knowledge of those are required. These processes are in red, as mentioned on both slides. That's a brief overview of the key aspects regarding ITIL and the benefits, the service lifecycle, and some of the key processes that you need to be aware of. Let's now move on to discussing the exam. The ITIL Foundation exam. You may have seen that the exam is closed book, but you won't need any books because if you stay on the course for the 3 days, do the recommended pre-course reading, and do the allocated homework provided in the evening during the course, you'll be fully prepared to take and pass the exam. In-class participants can take the exam on the last day of the course, which will be held at either the organisation as to if they're doing an on-site course, or it could be held at a location provided by Learning Tree, such as one of our education centres. For online participants, you can schedule this for a later date. You've got 1 hour to complete the exam. However, additional time is available for special circumstances. Speak with your account manager about those special circumstances, and they will ensure the instructor is aware from it from the start of the course and ensure that you do have additional time when taking that exam if you do have those circumstances. Before anyone takes a course with the certification exam, it's quite interesting that the first thing we do as students is look to see how much we need to actually pass the exam. For this particular ITIL Foundation exam, you need 26 out of 40. So in this case, it's about 65%. In my opinion, this is definitely a reasonable passing mark in terms of ensuring that as many people as possible have a chance to pass the exam. Passing the ITIL Foundation exam is also a prerequisite for taking further ITIL qualifications, and therefore ensuring that you do take this certification can give you the best possible chance of actually doing further intermediate courses and hopefully pursuing your ITIL development. If you do go onto our Learning Tree website, you will see a course qualification structure that will show you more information about the intermediate courses on offer and hopefully things that you may want to follow on to. Course preparation. The first thing I recommend to prepare for any foundation course is that you attend this session. And before the course, I recommend at least 1 to 2 hours of studying, and this is just a recommendation provided on behalf of Learning Tree International. I would encourage you to spend at least 1 to 2 hours to prepare for the course before you arrive for that first day, so you don't have that sense that we're speaking a different language and you aren't overwhelmed. During the course, you're going to be spending 6 to 7 hours a day going through the ITIL terminology, going through slides, doing activities, mock questions. And by the end of it, yes, I'm sure that you're going to have that feeling that the last thing you want to do when you go back to your home or hotel is to do more work in the evening. But the way I see this is that we're talking about 2 evenings on day 1 and day 2. And all you need to do is just spend an hour or so just practicing those mock questions, ensuring that you go through those slides and reinforce those key concepts and those key principles that you've covered on that course. Now, I say 1 to 2 hours, but it depends on the individual. You may need half an hour or you may need 2 hours. And this is for you to decide. The estimated time is just a guideline provided by Learning Tree, and the instructor on your course will be more than happy to assist you in terms of what you need to do in the evening and how long you should spend. In summary, we've helped you prepare to attend the course 1197, which is the course number for the ITIL Foundation certification. We've covered what is ITIL, the reason for adoption and its benefits. We've briefly reviewed the concept of a service and its associated stakeholders. We then went on to look at an overview of this service lifecycle framework and broke down the stages and talked about the relevant processes that you need to be aware of for the foundation course. Now, we did go through the processes in very high level, but please bear in mind that something we've covered in minutes will be covered in much more detail when you actually attend that ITIL Foundation course. Now, during this session and after this session, and hopefully during your course too, there are some useful links and materials that we would like to share with you. I recommend, not just from a perspective for preparing the course, but also after the course as well, to keep in touch via these various methods. These methods include having a Facebook page and a LinkedIn group at Learning Tree International. We also have some author-created blogs on ITIL, and I happen to be one of those authors. We also have an ITIL forum, for which I'm a moderator, that we recommend you access after this session. You can access it on the My Learning Tree account on the Learning Tree website. The ITIL Foundation book is also another good source that we also recommend during the foundation course to have handy to your close by. Spending an hour or two going through this book before the course would be extremely useful. Thank you for viewing this presentation. Hopefully you found this session very useful. If you do have any questions, please do go and log on to the ITIL forum via the My Learning Tree account and enter your questions there. You will get a response from an ITIL instructor and maybe some feedback from other ITIL students. Thank you and good luck on the course.